Hi, this is Sky Nelson Isaacs. I'd like to invite you one more time to the Living in Flow course, which is available online at www.thetterutthrivehere.com/livinginflow, and tell you a little bit more about what the course is going to bring and some of the common challenges that come up in trying to develop a theory of synchronicity. So have you ever had the experience of an opportunity coming your way and you said, "No way, I can't do that"? I had this experience one time at the company I worked for where at a time when we really needed a motivational shot in the arm as a team, out of the blue, one of the managers from a different department came and said, "We have an opportunity to onboard a high-profile client, but it's got to be rushed, and I don't want to force this on your team. Do you want to do this?" And my first reaction was, "No, we're not going to do this. There's no way we can do this with quality and successfully." And that's my main concern. But I looked inside myself and I noticed that I had a resistance that was coming from a fear of not getting it right. And I realized I had a team behind me, so we met as a team and discussed it and realized that it could be done without any customization. And it could be done in the time frame that we wanted by just setting up a generic client for them. And we would onboard this new high-profile client that would give us all a shot in the arm and make us feel great about ourselves as a team. So I want to talk right now about the feelings that come up which make it hard to move forward towards opportunities that are really there for us. I want to talk about living from the heart. And I don't mean living with more emotion, expressing ourselves more emotionally. I mean allowing ourselves to know what are the actual sensations going on in our chest. Because when we resist those sensations, we have trouble knowing exactly how to respond. We respond reactively to things, and we don't necessarily make the best choices. We get out of flow. So in this particular case, when I felt a reaction of, I want to make sure this works right, I don't want to feel a sense of shame or failure from this project, that almost made me stop and say no to a project that was ultimately going to be successful. Instead of that, the practice that I think the work in synchronicity leads to is allowing the feeling of shame or fear of failure to come into our hearts. Because fear is just a resistance of feelings that we don't want to have. The feeling's already there. I was already feeling a sense of shame and inadequacy and fear of failure. By letting that be true and feeling that in my chest, actually allowing the sensations to exist, they moved on. And I was able to then not take actions to push away those feelings, not reject the project in order to make sure I don't feel failure. By allowing myself to experience that sensation, I could risk feeling failure. Because ultimately, our hearts are not afraid. Our hearts live in the world in a way that is full-throated, fully engaged in life, and not afraid of those mistakes or those feelings of shame or whatever it might be that cause us to hesitate and be afraid. So what's a decision that you're facing that gives you some pause or makes you automatically say, "No, I don't want to do that"? That maybe you want to follow. Try to identify the feeling that you're resisting. Is this a feeling that shows up in other places in your life? Do you have a story about it? I always mess up when this kind of opportunity comes up. Or I'm always embarrassed by the way things unfold in this type of situation. Try dropping the story. Just feel what it feels like to imagine that situation. Allow that sensation to exist in your body. From this place, I hope you might have more access to think about how you really want to behave in this situation, what choice you really want to make, without choosing something that's just trying to push away this feeling that you don't want to have. By feeling our feelings authentically, we gain more access to the whole spectrum of who we are as human beings, and the whole spectrum of what we're capable of. Finally, you can disassociate the experience of the feeling you're having from the situation itself. So instead of saying to yourself, "This situation is really stressing me out," you can say to yourself, "I tend to get stressed out when this type of situation occurs." It's not about the circumstance. It's about you. Living in flow is about accessing more of you so that you make it through the circumstances with flying colors. Now, there's a couple of interesting objections or problems that come up in this research. One is that quantum mechanics doesn't apply to the everyday world. And I've gone to quite extensive lengths in my research to show that this is actually a result of our perception of the world, that we think quantum mechanics doesn't apply because we don't actually know what to look for. But quantum mechanics, if you apply what I would call the branching tree of probabilities or possibilities, if you apply that to the everyday world, which leads to an understanding of synchronicity, a model of synchronicity. If you apply that to the everyday world, you get a world that looks almost exactly like what we have today. You don't see strange effects due to quantum mechanics because you don't see those in the microscopic world either. So I argue very carefully that quantum mechanics does apply to everything in the universe, not just the microscopic things that you can't see. And in fact, one of the core theories or interpretations of quantum mechanics called the many worlds hypothesis, invented in the mid 20th century, is one of the few that has lasted the test of time and actually, as the most simplistic interpretation of the mathematics of quantum mechanics, survived as a viable theory. So don't be convinced that quantum mechanics doesn't apply to the everyday world. We don't actually have evidence of that. It simply is the most plausible theory based on what we think we observe in the world. And I will go into much more depth in that in the course, and I do in the book as well. You also might have the question that, is synchronicity a positive process? Is it a Pollyanna attitude to go through life thinking that you can just manifest things that are positive in your life? Synchronicity is not a positive process. It's neutral. It's the way that circumstances of life show up to reflect back to you the choices you're making. In doing so, it brings difficult situations just as much as it brings easy situations. It brings negative as much as it brings positive. Because all of those, negative and positive, are means for you to learn and grow in life. They can all serve as positive steps forward. That is ultimately the goal that I think synchronicity shows up in our life for. That is ultimately the way of flow. I hope you'll join me for the Living in Flow course. I'm really excited about it. You can find details about it and sign up right now at www.theletteruthrivehere.com/livinginflow or at my website www.skynelson.com/course. Or you can sign up for a free webinar that provides you more information into the details of the course. Thanks for joining. I hope to see you there.